probably thinking, I didn't even know this was the case. And a couple of years ago, I didn't know either. But we just assumed that the House of Representatives is 435 members. It's been that way, and pretty much everybody alive today has never known anything but a House of 435. But because we have these dramatic and unequal disparities between large and small districts, and there are actually 5 parties in this lawsuit from the 5 least represented states. They are Montana, that I mentioned. We have South Dakota, Delaware, Utah, and Mississippi. These are the 5 least represented states based upon the number of the population in their states relative to the actual representatives that they receive in Congress. So we discovered this. We realized this was wrong. This was completely anti-American when you talk about this kind of level of inequity. So we decided to pursue an actual lawsuit in court. We got now what is 9 plaintiffs in this lawsuit. We've not only proven, because there's 2 things that the plaintiffs who filed the lawsuit need to prove. One is injury. There's clearly injury because of this massive and unfair, unequal representation. But secondarily, you have to prove that you can create a remedy, or that you can produce a remedy that actually improves, for all parties concerned, the level of inequity. And in the lawsuit, which you can check out at apportionment.us, you can see that we put out a couple of Plan A and Plan B, and also enumerated in our briefs a number of other options to expand this House of 435 to be larger, which, by the way, creates smaller districts. So instead of over 700,000 people on average per district, which will be according to the 2010 census, we shrink that number so that these districts comprise a fewer number of people, so that the representative who represents us, who is our voice in government, represents a smaller number of people, so that you will have better representation, more appropriate representation, better access, and all these sorts of things. So that's why we filed this lawsuit. Now, I'm going to mention something briefly, and we'll expand more on this as we cover future videos. But the government, actually, yours and my government, here's what they said. Basically, we can do whatever we want. We can come up with any house size we want, and it doesn't matter how unequal it is, because they don't believe that they are required to follow the same law that they impose on the states. Did you know that within each state, and California, by the way, has, of these 435, they have 53 representatives. Do you know that all those 53 representatives, the amount of disparity between the largest and smallest district within the state of California is a small fraction of 1% disparity? Basically, no disparity is really tolerated. But here, so that's at the state level, within a state, as they divvy out these seats. But if you look across the nation, we have disparities that exceed 82%. The Supreme Court declared unconstitutional in 1983 a case called Karcher v. Daggett, that in 1983 they declared that a disparity percentage from largest to smallest district of 0.7%. Too big, unconstitutional. But yet here at the national level, we have a disparity level as of the 2000 census that is 9,100% greater than what was declared unconstitutional in this Karcher v. Daggett case in 1983. But yet, we still have this inequity that remains. Now, I submit to you that if this inequity was based on race, if the people of Montana, instead of living in Montana, were of some specific race, or if we collected all of the people who were impoverished and below the poverty line, and we were oppressing them in terms of voters, voting strength, voter equity, this country wouldn't have stood for that. We would have corrected that inequity long ago. But because it's based strictly on geographic and demographic location of where a person lives, this inequity remains. And by the way, to this point, while there have been lawsuits that touch on this issue, there has not been a lawsuit that argues the exact same legal, constitutional, and historical points that we do in Clemens v. Department of Commerce. So we think we have an excellent chance. We think we've articulated all of the points necessary not only to prove injury, but that there's a remedy, and that the defense, in this case the government, has to prove why this inequity is so large, that it's appropriate. And I'll talk in a future video about some of the legal mechanics behind this. But you can see that this lawsuit was critical to jumpstart and be the catalyst to fix inequity that's been persistent for years and years and years. And we as a country are too committed to equality in so many other ways to let this inequity that exists today continue. Thank you for listening.